Tonight, part of the Trans-Canada Highway was closed, and it'll stay that way likely for days. With so many roads affected in so many parts of southern New Brunswick, the Coast Guard has been called in to help with the growing number of rescues by boat.
Hey, you're on dry land, man.
For now, evacuations are still voluntary, but officials are pleading with people to leave the flood zones while it's still safe to do so.
A night evacuation by boat is a dangerous and risky operation, and if we don't have to go there, we don't want to.
The threat stretches all along the river from Fredericton to St. John, but many residents are refusing to leave, including on the Kingston Peninsula, a vulnerable strip of land between two rising rivers. Kayla Hounsell has that story.
The water threatens to breach the sandbags at any moment.
This came up really fast.
She's boarded up her windows and she's using pumps in an effort to keep the water out.
You know, I have neighbors down the road. They've shut down. You know.
Some have given up, but Hines is determined to stay, despite all that water.
You know, right now, if you were standing on my beach, you would be over your head in water.
Her neighbors are sandbagging too. This is Jody McCormick's childhood home, and she can't bear to leave.
You just try to save it.
As residents struggle to save their homes, they're also worried about access for emergency services. With so many roads now impassable, they fear ambulances just won't be able to get to those in need.
It would be a good 4 hours for them to get to a hospital, and in a crisis situation, they're not going to make it.
This ferry is one of only 2 still operating. Typically there are 5. The water level is so high the ferries can't let cars off. In this case, they were able to use sand to build a ramp before the road flooded.
We have to start getting some help from the government or from some other agency. And in rural New Brunswick, we don't seem to be getting that as much as we are in the urban areas.
Local MLA Bill Oliver takes us further into the flood zone. Everywhere we look, there are signs the situation here is far worse. In this home, the basement is already full of water, and it could soon reach the first floor.
We had 5 pumps and we couldn't keep up. So this is a real disaster.
Friends came to help her move all of her furniture upstairs.
We will never be able to thank the people in the neighborhood. We don't realize what kind of neighborhood we live in until something like this happens.
And authorities say it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Long Point, New Brunswick.
New Brunswick's premier was on hand in St. John today, actually giving a helping hand to residents there preparing for the worst. He was moving heavy furniture out of a flooded home. I reached him a short time afterwards, back in Fredericton. Have a listen. Premier, we have seen the situation go from bad to worse to who knows what we'll see tomorrow. What is your most urgent concern right now?
Well, thank you for having me, Andrew. Right now, we just want New Brunswickers to know that if they have experienced flooding in the past, if they're in the flood zones of the current impacted areas, that they really should look for alternative accommodations. We understand that many feel that they have seen floods before in the province and that they can handle it. This is a flood like we've never seen over the last few decades, or maybe even in the history of our province. So a lot of surprises could come over the next few hours and days. So we ask them to seek alternative accommodations with family or friends. And if they can't find anyone to help, then they can call the Red Cross at 1-800-863-6582. But at the same time, I do want to say that I've been inspired by New Brunswickers. They're stepping up to help their family members, friends, and complete strangers just because they're neighbors. And it's inspiring to see, and I thank them for being New Brunswickers and doing what they're doing to help their communities.
And I am curious, why the decision so far not to call in the military? Because you talk about the unprecedented nature of the flooding that we're seeing. I mean, at what point would the province decide, okay, we need their help?
Well, we discuss every single day what our resources are like at the moment. Do we have enough resources? Are the people out there exhausted and need more support? So every single day we're reevaluating what resources we need to deploy and if there are additional resources needed. I can tell you that we are willing to call in the Army if it's necessary and if it will support keeping New Brunswickers safe. At this point, we've actually chose another route for today. We asked the Canadian Coast Guard to come into the province and help us. We have some people and families that are isolated because of road infrastructure being flooded, so we want to make sure that although we'd like them to evacuate their homes, for those that are staying there, we want to be able to ensure that we have access in case of an emergency and so that we can support them. We completely understand people want to protect their homes, their belongings, their memories. It means a lot to people, and we understand that, but again, we ask them to evacuate if possible, but if they don't, we will ensure with the Canadian Coast Guard support that we are in the area in case of an emergency and so that we can support them.
Well, Premier, we wish you well. We know you're exceedingly busy there, so thank you for taking the time to talk with us. We appreciate that.
Oh, thank you for all your time.
You heard the Premier mention New Brunswickers stepping up to help others, and we want to highlight one of them. You remember Darlings Island? We took you there yesterday. Tiny community that's been cut off from the mainland since Sunday because there's only one road leading on and off the island, and it's been washed out. That's where this guy comes in. His name is Rob DeCanny, better known as Uber Rob.
How you been?
You can see why. He's taken time off work to provide a free water taxi for stranded residents.
It's just terrible to see like the elderly, the kids, even just regular healthy folks struggling to get through that water. When I first started on Monday, it was up to their hips, wearing hip waders, and then to chest waders, and now it's impassable. The water is literally over their head, and you have to dodge some lawnmowers, like tractors, barrels, old docks. So it's not the challenge of being in the water, it's all the stuff and debris that's floating in the water.
Thank you, Rob.
Bill, anytime, sir, anytime.